the 18th century founder of the Redemptorists and doctor of the Church, St. Alphonsus, is a patron saint of vocations, confessors, moral theologians, and the lay apostolate. Born to a noble family and therefore given a ridiculously long name, Alphonsus Maria Antonio Giovanni Cosimo Damiano Michele Gaspard di Liguri, the Fons, as we might call him today, undertook doctorates in both civil and canon law and became a highly successful barrister. But he wrote to a friend that the legal profession is, to quote him, too full of difficulties and dangers. We lead an unhappy life and run the risk of dying an unhappy death. A repentant lawyer myself, I can sympathise with Alfie's feelings. And so it was that in his late 20s, he forswore the law and discerned that God was calling him to leave the world and give yourself to me. He studied for the priesthood, and the rest is history. In today's Gospel, Jesus teaches us about responding to his call and not looking back. He is clearly talking about something more than pursuing our hobbies or picking jobs. He's talking about vocation. And the very mention of that word can be as concealing as it is revealing. For one thing, when Catholics hear the word vocation, they tend to think of priests and nuns. Two vocations we rightly prize and certainly need, but hardly the only two vocations in the Church. A second risk is that we so romanticise the idea that vocation becomes something that the lucky few learn from heavenly voices or prophetic words, like St. Paul heard on the road to Damascus, or Elisha heard in our first reading from Elijah. Thirdly, people can think that the discernment of vocation is a convoluted, almost magical process, achieving high levels of holiness and certainty. And this excuses procrastinating forever as members of the Order of Perpetual Discerners. So deceiving can the word vocation be, that I sometimes think it would be best to abandon it altogether. But instead, let me contribute a few thoughts on vocation to a Catholic Mythbusters series. First, our word vocation comes from the Latin for calling. To say someone is called or has a calling is to say that they are selected from among ordinary people and graced for a particular extraordinary life. So it's nonsense to say that everyone has a vocation. Those who are called must be called from amongst others who are not. And they are given a particular inspiration, way of life, or work to do that others are not. All of which is not to say that only a few people have a calling from God. St. Paul described the Galatian Christians, to whom he wrote today in our epistle, as the called. And the Second Vatican Council said that all the baptized are called to holiness. So it's nonsense to think that only priests and nuns have vocations, or that everyone has the same vocation. Demonstrably, we've had scholar saints like St. Alphonsus that we call doctors of the Church, prophet saints like Elijah and Elisha in our first reading, apostle, martyr, pastor and virgin saints such as we name today in the Roman canon, men and women saints recognised for their works of mercy such as Mother Teresa, married saints, single saints, an altogether diverse group who've responded well to God's call. So if all Christians are called by God out from amongst the run-of-the-mill of humanity to seek fulfilment in a holy life, but not all in the same way, how are we baptized to know what is to be our particular way? If God has destined me for heaven and given me a custom-fit path to sainthood, why is it so hard to know what He wants me to do with my life, or even with the next year, or even day? Well, this much is clear. If God doesn't send heavenly voices to clarify everything for us, He does not leave us in a mire of darkness and confusion either. He gives us the gifts of word and sacraments, and through them powerful inspiration and insight. He invites us to speak to Him in prayer and speak also to His saints, and not just dear departed ones like St. Alphonsus or Mother Teresa, but also the wise and holy living amongst us. He gives us minds to think with, and so come to know our own gifts and the world's needs. Minds to reflect upon how these match up, how each of us might best avail ourselves of the opportunities, best flourish and be happy. In other words, He gives us all the equipment we need to work out how to vote, to work out where to put our lives. In our Gospel today, Jesus embraces His own vocation. He resolutely takes the road to Jerusalem, we are told. That is, to His passion and our salvation. Along the way, some respond well to Him and become His messengers, His apostles, His called and sent ones. Others would not receive Him because He was making for Jerusalem, Luke tells us. He was taking the hard road to glory. Some considered becoming His followers until they realised it will cost them in terms of insecurity, discomfort, letting go of some emotional ties. So it's clear that vocation is more than career. Careers we choose for ourselves, vocations, in a sense, choose us. In a career-oriented society, the focus is on saleable skills, things that will get us good jobs. maximising our wealth and consumption and passing pleasures. It's not on getting to know ourselves and our high calling and pursuing that, whatever the sacrifice. But ours is an alternative wisdom. And so our Catholic schools and universities and parishes must be vocational training colleges. Not in the usual sense of that term, but in the sense that they help us to see that there is more to life than personal ambitions, work targets, and company profits. That there are other measures of success, other ways to lead and serve and so be happy. Alphonsus gave up a highly profitable career in order to embrace one that would bring him ultimate happiness, though it too involved a great many struggles along the way. There would be Jerusalem before Galilee for him, Calvary before the Ascension, just as there was for his Lord. There would be tares amongst the wheat of his life. Like the guys in our gospel this morning, we've all got excuses to choose the easier course. We betray our own imagination and intelligence in refusing even to consider the whole range of options, what we are best suited to, what it is to which Christ is calling us. We postpone the decision like the guy who wants first to take leave, or the other guy who wants first to bury his father. St. Luke doesn't tell us whether the man's father was even dead yet. Perhaps there would be several years' wait upon the death, and then the burial, and of course the inheritance, before he'd make up his mind about following Jesus. Let the dead bury the dead, Jesus responds, with his customary directness. If you're alive to me, you'll put God's kingdom first, before all your plans. You'll make your life a pilgrimage to heaven, not a joyride to the land of the dead. Commit now. Surrender to the Father's will. Stop making plans to become holy in the ever-elusive future. Use the gift of your intelligence to work out what I want you to do with me. There'll be plenty of time for the goodbyes. Now is the time for hello, for saying yes to God.